Okay, let's dive in. We often hear citizenship described as, well, the source we're looking at today calls it a priceless and profound gift. We're talking about U.S. citizenship.
Right, and specifically birthright citizenship. The idea of becoming a citizen simply by being born here.
Exactly. And the big question is, what exactly is it? And how does a specific government document, like the one we have here, try to define or maybe clarify its edges?
That's our focus for this deep dive. We're looking closely at a presidential order. It's titled Defining United States Birthright Citizenship.
Okay.
And our plan is to really stick to the text. What does this specific order say? What's its stated purpose? And what changes or clarifications is it actually introducing, just based on the words on the page?
And right off the bat, this document ties itself into some significant history, doesn't it? It mentions the 14th Amendment, even the Dred Scott decision.
It really does. It places itself in that long, ongoing conversation about who belongs, who is a citizen. It explicitly points out the 14th Amendment was meant to repudiate Dred Scott.
The decision that denied citizenship based on race.
Precisely. So the order grounds its own definitions in that history, saying, look, this amendment fixed that problem.
Okay, so let's start there with the foundation,
Right.
the 14th Amendment. The order quotes the key phrase, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens."
Oh.
Now, on the surface, you might read that and think, okay, born here, you're in. Sounds pretty universal.
It can sound that way, but the order makes a crucial point right there. It argues that the phrase "subject to the jurisdiction thereof," well, claims that phrase has never actually been interpreted to just automatically cover every single person born on U.S. soil.
So not quite as simple as born here citizen in every single case. There have always been sort of exceptions understood. That's the order's position.
That's what this order asserts, yes. It argues that this language was always understood to exclude certain categories, people born here but not fully under U.S. authority, like historically children of foreign diplomats, for instance. And it also notes that the main federal law on this, 8 U.S.C. 1401, generally mirrors the amendment's language.
Got it. So with that historical interpretation laid out, this specific presidential order steps in. And this is where it gets down to the real details. The document says its purpose is to define who, for government agency purposes, falls into that category. Born here, but considered not subject to the jurisdiction when it comes to getting citizenship papers.
Exactly. It's not claiming to change the Constitution itself. It's about providing a working definition for agencies, specifically about documentation. And it zeroes in on two specific groups defined by the status of the parents when the child is born.
Right. Let's unpack those two categories, because this seems to be the absolute core of what this order is doing, defining things for agency action. What's the first one?
The first category is, well, pretty clearly defined. It covers persons born in the U.S. when their mother was unlawfully present here, and, this is key, the father was not a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident at the time of the birth.
Okay, so mother's status is unlawful presence, plus the father isn't a citizen or a green card holder. Got it. What's the second category?
The second one involves cases where the mother's presence was actually lawful, but explicitly temporary. So think like someone on a visitor visa, maybe the visa waiver program, or student visa, work visa, tourist visa, those sorts of things.
Lawful but temporary.
Right. And again, just like the first category, the father must also not be a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident at the time of birth.
So in both scenarios, the father doesn't have that permanent Thai citizen or LPR, and the mother is either unlawfully present or here legally but only temporarily. That's the condition set by this order.
Yes, and it's very specific. The order even defines mother and father for its own purposes, the immediate female biological progenitor and immediate male biological progenitor, really drilling down on the terms.
Okay, so that's the who. Who falls into these defined categories according to this document? What's the direct action or policy that follows from that? What are agencies told to do?
The order is quite direct. It instructs U.S. government departments and agencies, it names state, Homeland Security, Social Security Administration, that they shall not issue documents recognizing U.S. citizenship, nor accept such documents as proof for people born into those two specific categories we just discussed.
And this isn't looking backward, right? There's a specific start date mentioned in the source.
That's right. Really important point. This policy instruction applies only to people born within the U.S. after 30 days from the date of the order. The order is dated January 20th, 2025.
So doing the math, that means it affects births on or after February 19, 2025.
Correct. It's perspective only.
Okay. So agencies are told not to document citizenship for these individuals born after that date. Does the document say anything about who is not affected by this?
Yes, it does include clarifications on that. It explicitly states that the order is not intended to affect the entitlement of other individuals to get their U.S. citizenship documented.
Such as?
Well, it specifically gives the example of children born in the U.S. whose parents are lawful permanent residents. Their path to citizenship documentation isn't changed by this order.
Okay, that's a clear carve-out. Now, how does this actually get put into practice? What does the order say about implementation?
It tasks specific Cabinet Secretary of State, the Attorney General, Homeland Security, and also the head of Social Security to make sure their department's regulations and policies line up with this order.
So alignment is key.
Yeah, and it also requires the heads of all relevant executive departments and agencies to issue public guidance on how they'll implement these instructions. And they have a deadline within 30 days of the order's date.
Quick turnaround. Are there any sort of standard legal caveats or limitations mentioned?
There are. It includes the usual language, that it has to be implemented consistent with applicable law, and also subject to the availability of appropriations, meaning Congress needs to fund any necessary action.
Standard government procedure stuff.
Pretty much. And crucially, it states very clearly that this order is not intended to, and actually does not, create any new legal rights or benefits that someone could sue to enforce against the government.
Ah, okay. That's a significant point. It's framed entirely as an internal instruction to government agencies on how they should act regarding paperwork, not as something creating a new right for individuals to claim in court. That's how the order itself puts it.
Exactly. Its own text limits its scope to that internal executive branch directive.
So if we boil it all down, trying to get the main point from just this text, what's the core takeaway of this presidential order?
Well, based purely on this document, the executive branch is setting out a specific, narrow definition for its agencies. It defines who, among those born in the U.S., should be considered not subject to the jurisdiction for the specific purpose of citizenship documentation.
And that definition hinges entirely on the parent status.
Right. Specifically, the mother's unlawful presence or temporary lawful presence combined with the father not being a citizen or LPR. And the direct result is an instruction. Agencies should not issue or accept citizenship documents for children born under those specific conditions after February 19th, 2025.
But it also makes clear it doesn't touch others, like kids born to LPRs.
Correct. It's presented as a clarification for specific cases going forward.
So it's a very targeted instruction, wouldn't you say, aimed at how agencies handle documentation in these defined circumstances according to the order itself.
That seems to be precisely the stated purpose and scope within the document, yes? Clarifying agency policy for these limited situations based on its interpretation.
Okay, let's wrap up this deep dive then. We spent our time looking really closely at the text of this specific presidential order.
Yeah.
And what it does is define very specific circumstances based on parental immigration status at the time of birth, under which individuals born in the U.S. are, for the purpose of government documentation according to this order, considered not subject to U.S. jurisdiction.
And digging into a document like this, word by word, really underlines how important the precise language is, doesn't it? The definitions it creates for itself, the scope it sets out.
Absolutely. It's all in the details.
In this case, it's an agency directive about paperwork for very specific groups born after a certain date. You really have to stick to what the text actually says it's doing.
So let's go back to that initial idea we mentioned, the one from the source itself, citizenship as a priceless and profound gift. When you consider how legal documents and executive actions, like this order we just analyzed, work to draw lines and set conditions for even getting the paperwork for that status, especially when those conditions focus so specifically on something like a parent's immigration status at the exact moment of birth.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely adds another layer of complexity to think about, doesn't it? It makes you ponder how the boundaries of that gift are defined and redefined over time.